Hi, guys. Welcome back to Call Me Cordelia. I'm Ophelia.
And I'm Alex.
And in this episode, we'll talk about the very first episode of season 3. It's really
Woo!
exciting.
Yes,
As
it's
usual,
exuberant.
it's exuberant. As usual, we'll talk about this in a chronological order, but do know we'll talk about spoilers. We will watch it with CBC as it comes out. So this has spoilers, guys. If you don't want to be spoiled, then don't listen to this, please.
Yeah, we're not holding back.
Yeah.
Both of us are watching it, like Ophelia said. We're both watching it along with Canada through a VPN right now. Neither of us are
Yep.
Canadian. But again, important note, we will also be giving them the views on Netflix when it comes out in January. So just
Yes.
your friendly reminder that if you are watching on a VPN, please, 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 please remember to rewatch when it comes back to Netflix in January to give them the views because I don't want them to miss out on that. But
Yeah, and you don't even have to watch it actively, just in the background when you're whatever cleaning your room, just to
yeah,
get those views in.
exactly. So just remember to do that. We will be doing that, I promise. There's absolutely no way I'm going to be watching this season only one time. So let's just get into it. We are exuberant.
Okay, yes, we are. So, I felt like as a whole, this episode wasn't exciting. They did set up all the storylines, which made it exciting as to what the future will hold.
Yeah, it was a very nice, like cozy, like
Yeah.
fun episode. It was very expositional, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of expected that from the first episode, especially since we knew that we were going to be coming in from a time jump. They just kind of have to not only like reestablish or establish like what they're kind of going to do with everything, but they also have to reestablish the characters because I feel like the age between 14 and 16 you just change so much that they just kind of had to like reintroduce everything, so it was pretty expositional, but like I said, just kind of expected that, but it was really good. I was very very much enjoyed myself watching it.
I just loved how every season they open up with Anne in a certain way. Like
Yes.
season 1 was with her little anxious in the train, and then season 2 was with her in the forest, like a forest princess, and now she was like this fairy in a snowy landscape with her hair
Oh,
in the wind, and it was so ethereal, and I loved it so much.
oh my
Like you can see
gosh.
her growing in confidence and really getting into herself, and that is our opening shot. It's just gorgeous.
Yes, and we wrote this, or at least I did. I wrote this probably about three different ways in my notes. The way that they wrote her speaking was very mature, but still, like, it didn't, I feel like it didn't take away from any of her character, um, in my opinion,
Yeah,
so far.
she just calmed down, but she still has this kind of spark and this, she still has her own vocabulary and her way with looking at the world. Like it's still very wide-eyed and naive in some ways, and that's really nice.
Yeah, I agree. They also casted so perfectly from the beginning. We've said that so many times, but Amy Beth is the perfect Anne. They
Yeah.
casted the perfect age because you're literally watching her grow up, like it's like the Stranger Things kids in a way. Like you are
Hmm.
watching them get older, and she's so beautiful now. Not that she wasn't, when she first started the show, she was like cute, but she is so unbelievably beautiful now. Like she just aged into the role and the timeline that they've given her so perfectly. So I could
Yeah.
go on about that forever, but
Speaking of looks, first of all, Ruby grew a foot, and
oh my,
Moody slimmed down enormously. I'm shook.
yes, way to go,
I
Jacob. They
didn't
look
I didn't
so
even
no.
recognize Moody.
I know for a split second when he came up to Diana when they were playing hockey, I was like, hang on. And then I realized it was Moody, and I was watching with two friends, and we all three like screamed. I can't believe how old they look now.
I thought they recasted him because I just did not recognize him. I'm
He
so
looks so
confused.
old. It really does make me a little emotional because I feel like we've seen them grow up, and I feel like a proud mother. I don't know how else to explain it.
The last time we saw Moody, he was being like, "My whole life is a mistake," and now he's suddenly like a young man, and I'm just so confused.
He's still, I mean, very on brand for Moody still to like slip when he's trying to talk to Diana at the hockey game because yes, but we love you, Moody Spurgeon, never change. Um,
Yes, we stand.
So, also, if you guys are aware of the original books or source material or anything, a big thing about Anne growing up, she does kind of grow into her looks, like especially in the book, they really hammer that in. And part of that is the fact that her hair starts turning more of the auburn that she like sort of dreams of. And I personally think that they are subtly going with that in the show. Like, is it just me or has Amy Beth's hair like
Mhm.
gotten darker? Like, I think that they're trying
Yeah,
to
it
make it more
did. It
auburny
definitely
now.
did. In
Yeah, which
season one, it was like Gilbert said, a carrot red, like an actual orange, and now it's more of a yeah, more of it's turning auburn, like you said.
yes, which excellent detail. I very much appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, so we open not just with this scene of Anne riding through the forest, but obviously immediately after the title sequence, we have her riding up onto a hockey game, a little ice
Yes.
hockey, and I loved that. What were your thoughts on that scene?
I was surprised. I didn't realize they'd go super slice of life. But I liked it, and I especially loved um, how they introduced the fact that these First Nations people make hockey sticks
Mm-hmm.
because I thought that was just for plot. But I read an article and I put it in our notes. They actually did make them. Like there was a certain tribe that made hockey sticks. So it's really cool how they not only showcase these First Nations people, but also respect their history and those little facts because I didn't know
Yes.
that. That's really cool.
And if you guys are interested in reading that article, we can definitely post that on the Tumblr at Call Me Cordelia
Oh
podcast.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
very fascinating. But yeah, that's again what I appreciate so much about Moira. Later on in my notes, I just have a bullet point that says, "And with an E, spit in the face of shying away from showing non-white cultures and period dramas, and walked away."
Yes. Yes.
like,
Yes.
not just showing how white society was in the time and
Hmm.
but like going into okay, what did the First Nations culture look like specifically in the 1880s 1890s, and like getting it presumably very accurate, including the hockey stick detail. Just excellent, Moira. Snaps for you. Way to not shy away from that.
What is your opinion on the girl Caquette?
Oh, we have decided to stand. We have decided to love forever already. I love her
Yes.
so much. I'm
Same.
smiling so much right now. She's such a little bean, but also I think we're gonna see more. She definitely has a spirit to her. Like when she chucks Billy's disgusting crusty rag back in his face, I stood up and clapped. Um, but again, I think we're going to address that as in prejudice later on because obviously
Definitely.
her father's immediate response to that was uh, don't provoke the white man, like he tells her,
Dude,
Kakwe, don't do that.
when he said that, I just like freaked the fuck out. That was
Oh
such a provocative line in the face of this of TV to just like spout that. That was insane. I loved that.
yes, and when he walked away and said um we're come on, Kakwe, let's leave this small man with his big ego, I
Yeah.
gasped. We have decided to stand not only her but her entire family.
Yeah, I think Caquette is also very relatable in some ways because she is one of the only ones that really understands English. And I've heard that with immigrant families, that's also usually the case that the children are like kind of the communicator between
Oh yeah,
worlds.
absolutely.
I also loved how when Anne was at their tribe, that she was just curious and open and exploring and being respectful. And, we expected that from Anne, but there's a fine line between being a white savior and being curious, which we've
Hmm.
discussed in the previous pod. So I'm really happy that she was just there to, be open-minded and write the
Observe.
article for the school newspaper. Yeah, it's just really nice. And also just how Coquette was like, "Oh, I like your scarf. I like those beads in your hair. Let's switch." Like it's such a wholesome
Oh,
scene.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure some of the synopsis for the future episodes came out, and one of them is that Caquette is going to go to school. So yeah, so I'm not sure if that is indefinitely, like she's going to come to school, and we discussed this in the previous pod when we were first introduced to Caquette, but a lot of times First Nations children were kind of taken from their culture and like quote
Yes.
civilized by being sent to school.
Ugh.
Or if she's just gonna visit, I don't know. I kind of am feeling like she's probably going to come to school, so I'm very excited to see that dynamic. Because I'm sure a lot of these kids have never hung out with a person of color, like their same age. So that will be a very interesting dynamic to see.
Um, Still continuing on with that ice hockey scene, I was surprised that Billy from season two, it was perceived that Billy would get a redemption arc because he didn't kill the fox in the end. But he seemed like the same douche, kind of. I mean, he's an asshole and a racist now, so
No,
um, I
surprise.
wonder if it was just like a one-time thing, or if it'll actually happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the end scene definitely was maybe more of an open-ended, like the writers felt like, oh, like we can go with this or we can't. Because keep in mind they weren't sure that they were gonna get a third season. I think it was way more up in the air than
Oh,
they kind of
yeah.
let on. So that ending scene could have been like, oh, maybe Billy doesn't suck as much as we thought. And now that they got a third season, they said, nope, he does suck as much as we thought. And he's also a racist. So that's great. Speaking of Billy, I would like to shout you out for a second for headcanoning literally since season one that Billy and Josie were going to be a thing and that happening.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised too.
Like, interesting dynamic,
It
interesting
makes
choice.
sense.
But also, yeah, it does because no one else in that school presumably is awful enough to want to end up with either one of them. So one of my bullet points below that just says disgusting. And I feel like that sums up pretty much how I feel about it. Um, Also, the next note below that is we have decided to stand Jane, which I'm that's such a funny dynamic. I want more of that. You know how she's like in the back of like their scenes and is like picking on
Uh,
Josie for it,
oh yeah.
which is interesting because okay, one, I'm all for getting a bigger Jane arc. Tell me about her. I want to know about her. I want to know why she doesn't suck as much as her brother. Um, but in season 1 and 2, it really seemed like Jane was kind of part of the posse. You know what I'm saying? Like just kind of
Mm-hmm.
going along with what Josie said or did. But this episode, it very much felt like she wasn't a fan of Josie. Like she might still be friends with her, but she seemed very annoyed. And I don't know if that's just from dating her brother, but like when she specifically said like about the take notice board when she was like, which doo doo doo, we'll come back to that later. But she said specifically like Josie's the one that posted that, or she's like, Jane's still trying to come to grips that Josie might be her sister, and Jane's like, in law. So I don't, that's a weird dynamic. I don't know how to interpret that.
Yeah, just think it's mainly because Josie is claiming Billy. I mean, if one of my best friends suddenly dated my brother, I mean, he has a girlfriend and they're very much in love, but if if one of my friends just casually started dating my brother, I wouldn't be happy too. So
Yeah,
I
sorry
kind of
guys, I feel as
understand
though the
you.
brother is off the market. Not
Yeah.
an option. um, but yeah, I want to know more about Jane this season. She's always been just kind of like a sweet, quiet character. Like I remember in season 2 when they were playing the spin the bottle game and they start like shouting stuff at Anne and Cole to like kiss and like calling them freaks. Like Jane was yelling at in Billy's face to stop. So I don't know. I feel like I could like Jane. I want more of her. I'm for it.
I honestly don't really care about her, but I get where you're coming from. I just think she's, yeah, just a character in the story, but that doesn't really have much impact, I think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think my point's more like make me care about her at Moira. Like I would like to
Oh,
care about her. Make me care about
yeah.
her. Um Also from that scene, I think we kind of brought in an issue that we had speculated that was going to be kind of Diana's arc, which is the my
Yes.
family won't allow it when Moody kind of flirts with her and they're like, ooh, like you've caught Moody's eye. And Diana very seriously says, my parents won't allow it. So I think we guessed right on that one, that kind of like classism and Diana kind of wondering about her place
The world.
in the society. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so excited about Diana's storyline. She's truly one of my favorite characters. I mean, there's not
Mhm.
many to choose from, but she's so interesting because I
Underrated.
think so many can relate to her because Anne is such an exuberant character. Like Gilbert is super charismatic and charming, but Diana is, you know, all like all of us, we are sometimes scared to voice our opinions. We're sometimes we want to follow, all the other people because we don't want to stand out. We want to be accepted and loved by friends and family and not do anything wrong. And I think everyone can relate to that to some extent, and it's just so nice to see her, become, like you said, like finding her place in the world, and I don't know, like standing up, and I, I don't know, it's going to be so cool to see, and
Yeah.
just
And
her
even
playing the piano super pettily. I died. I died.
oh my gosh, because that's like such a teenager thing to do. Honestly, like a preteen thing to do. That it was very on brand. But I agree. I think that even just from that one line, that kind of shows how much Diana has developed since Anne came. And also on her own, I'm sure, because you have season 1 Diana who wouldn't even walk with Anne because her mom said no, and wouldn't hang out with her. And then you have season 2 Diana, who, and again, like I think I mentioned this about Diana's development at some point in season 1, where she tells Ruby, it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what the other girls think. And then you have season 2, that little kind of telling conversation she had with the pianist when she was talking about how there's no way she'd be able to be a concert pianist because that's not really what her parents want, and kind of looking confused about that, I guess. And then you have this where she is outright telling her parents, "Hey, I don't want to go to Paris. Like I want to go to school here."
Mhm.
Um so I'm sure that it is going to be an arc of Diana figuring that out not only with school but presumably also with Jerry and among other things, which is great because I also love Diana Barry so much. She's a very underrated character. But I think that'll be a really interesting arc.
Yeah, and I just want to see at the end of this 5 season storyline, because Moira can tell the story in 5 seasons. I want to
Mhm.
see Diana at the end of it being like a piano playing nomad famous in all over the world with her
Oh,
French
yes.
boyfriend, and they live in Quebec, where they speak
Yes.
French to each other and just live a happy life with a child or something, whatever, I don't really care. Um, just to see her like make her own name, make herself renowned, and not just because she has distant family in Kensington Gardens that don't mean shit, you know?
Yes,
So
exactly.
that would be really cool. But anyway, Mary has a
Speaking
baby.
of a child, speaking of child, let's talk about this very important point. Sorry, I'm gonna reel it back in.
Alexis, you can take this because you're the most excited about this.
Okay, so basically, I told Ophelia the story like right before we started recording, but I didn't get to watch until Tuesday. So obviously there were spoilers out, and I was gonna watch with my two friends. And one of them is very impatient when it comes to waiting for shows or movies. But I was like, no, please wait till we can all watch it together on actually we watched it on Monday. I was like, please wait till we can just watch it on Monday. Like that's all I ask. And she said, okay. And then I literally was half asleep Sunday night, like at 2 a.m. And I get awoken to a FaceTime call from my friend. And she said, I found a picture. Please let me send it to you. And I said, no, I don't want to see it. We'll wait till we watch it tomorrow. And she was like, no, please, like, you don't understand. You're going to need to watch the episode after this. Please, I can't hold this to myself. And I was like, no, don't send it to me. And so finally she didn't. And then my friends came over the next day to watch it. Literally, I was setting up the computer to watch it on the TV. And they were talking, and the one that FaceTimed me the night before was like, oh my gosh, like Alex won't let me show her this, but let me show you. So she showed her the picture and they screamed, and she was like, oh, I did already see that spoiler. And then as soon as I unplugged my ears to like not hear spoilers and go back to fixing the computer, my friend goes, so do you want to know what they named the baby? And it took me negative 4 seconds to put together what she was talking about, and the scream that came out of me was something of from another planet. I don't know what it was, but my whole body started shutting down and I was panicking, and it was everything I needed and more, because that scene was amazing. So many great layers to it. Um, if we have said it a few times, but if we have decided to stand anybody in this season, it's Delphine. We stand Delphine. But I think seeing Bash with a baby, one, is amazing. I love I love that. And two, Ophelia, I literally cannot even talk about the have a good day Delphine with freaking Gilbert Blythe planting a kiss right on her forehead. The purest boy. This is what we talked about this actually in the trailer episode, didn't we?
You headcanon this that Gilbert will be in a very domestic routine with Mary and Bash, and it truly seems like, you know, he's like a brother or a son. Like he's just an extension of the family now.
Love it.
Um, and it's so natural. Like they just mesh. It like makes sense.
Yes.
Um, it's really yeah.
Well, even just like Bash doing the baby talk, and then Mary and Gilbert
So
like
on
shooting each
brand.
other.
Yes.
I know it's so on brand. But Gilbert and Mary like looking at each other, like kind of shaking their head and smiling. Like that is exactly how I thought this relationship was going to go. I love it so much, and I hope that there's a lot more of that. Which brings up an interesting point that I would love to hear your opinion about. We also kind
Okay.
of talked about this, I think, in the trailer episode as well. We've only had two. I don't know why it's so hard for me to remember. Um, but the fact that they have a new baby, and again, episode synopsis leaked for I think the first through 3 or 4 episodes, and it does say Elijah comes back to Avonlea, Elijah being Mary's son. So, how do you think that is going to be woven in? How do you think that's going to go down with them having Gilbert basically as another son, having a literal child now? Like, what are you thinking they're going to do with that?
Okay. Well, like we said, I think it'll cause conflict because, Elijah is a child out of wedlock, so I don't think Mary had given him the attention he needed as a child because she just couldn't for cultural reasons and time and probably not having much money. But now she is in a good situation and she can give her time and energy to Gilbert and this new child. So I think he'll be jealous. I think he'll manipulate her. Not like in a bad way, but just like, oh, so you love them but not me. Just in a very
Mm-hmm.
logical way. Even though manipulating is not logical, but um, yeah, I think that's also why Mary might be crying in bed in the trailer because the stress of Elijah and the guilt she has about it might haunt her a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think that'll happen. What do you think?
Basically, exactly what you said. I just think
Oh,
um, he obviously was kind of teased as a maybe antagonist for this season at the end of
yeah.
season 2 when they had the wedding and all of that and his ominous weird presence. But I think that is not just going to, and maybe I'm like thinking, maybe I'm just pulling stuff out of my butt, but I feel like that's going to be something that like a conflict that doesn't just affect their household. I kind of feel like it's going to start bringing in other things. It's going to kind of blow up into more, maybe. Because
What
so
do you
far
mean
that's
by that?
really, I don't really know. I feel like maybe it's just because I feel like he's the only sort of like quote antagonist that we had sort of teased for this season, and maybe I'm just used to coming off of season 1, like where they had the thieves obviously were going to be a part of the next season as antagonists. But I feel like maybe it will somehow affect, like he'll just like cause issues in Avonlea in general, or I don't really know if it's going to stay confined to a conflict between like Gilbert and Bash and Mary and him. I could be totally wrong because they definitely do little side conflicts for each character, but I don't know.
Maybe he'll bring the conflict out into the public, and through that conflict, Mary and Bash will connect to the tribe of Kakwet because they're
Oh
both
yeah.
marginalized and they may find support in one another. Because of the conflict that will go public via Elijah, the townspeople will ostracize Mary and Bash because they have a child now and they're not white.
Yeah.
um, but
I think
let's
that's likely.
let's put that aside, and I want to quickly touch upon a small detail, and that is that Marilla is doting on Mary's child, and they're like
Absolutely.
friends. They're friends.
Yeah, and the implication that Marilla comes over often, and not only that, but Mary talks about, oh, that's all Anne's been talking about. So like that kind of implies that Mary maybe has also been hanging out with Anne. And I told you this, but I really hope that they like kind of explore that and they don't just like put that fleeting comment in the first episode and not have Anne and Mary really interact at all. Because that would be such a wasted opportunity. I love both those characters so much, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, the fact I think Anne has really visibly changed Marilla and her maternal instincts.
God,
Um,
yes.
yeah, amazing. I loved that. Um, the very next scene. This was interesting. It might not be the very next, but this one was interesting to me. The sort of like friendship between Rachel and Miss Stacy now. Something
Oh,
very cool.
yeah. I didn't
Yeah.
even think about that. I don't know. I don't think we have to like look into that too hard because Rachel is like socializing with everyone, but it did like talk about her dead husband, so maybe it's interesting.
Right. So, well, the main thing that I got from this scene was when Rachel started bringing up setting up Miss Stacy with someone potentially. So I'm interested to see if that's going to be like a full plot arc where she's like trying to set Miss Stacy up with these men, and Miss Stacy's kind of like, oh, maybe, I don't know, but then kind of realizing like she's fine being alone and that's okay, and she just wants to, for now at least, keep the memory of her husband. Like, I don't know if suitors are going to be a thing. I wonder what they're going to do with that. I don't really know.
I think they'll like dip their toes into the plot, like they'll try, but that Stacy will immediately cut it off, like, no, I don't want this. And then with
Hmm.
Matthew, she'll rehash these memories that we've seen in the trailer. I don't think it'll be a full-fledged side plot. I don't think that's quite important this season.
Yeah, and if
I don't
anything, it
know.
might be just be a springboard for talking about Miss Stacy's past, being married and
Yeah,
everything.
I think so.
And we kind of talked about, I think we touched on this, but I think it would be interesting to use Miss Stacy's past and being a widow as a way to kind of relate to Anne, not just like, like give her. Kind of talked about how like she might offhandedly give her relationship advice, not necessarily, maybe not even necessarily knowing what it's about or what it's relating to, but just kind of giving advice. But also the fact that Anne, all the girls around her are kind of giving and feeling pressure to get married and pair up with somebody. And we saw that in the trailer. And Miss Stacy is very clearly in this scene being like, I'm totally fine not being married. Like, it's okay. I don't need to be married. I was married. We had a great life. I don't need to be married right now.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like that's going to be a big inspiration, or maybe just something that she talks about with Anne, because I think Anne feels very left out of the loop when it comes to that, I guess.
I think Miss Stacy is supposed to be an alternate timeline for what Anne could have been, but
Mhm.
won't be because of Gilbert, but just that
Oh my god.
even if Anne would end up like Stacy, it wouldn't be a bad thing. It wouldn't be, like a sad thing because she'd still be, a great
Yeah,
teacher. I think Stacy is just a mirror of another timeline of Anne, kind of.
right. And just like Josie makes ending up unmarried, like staying single, sound like the worst fate that could possibly happen to you, which it's
Yeah.
not. Spoiler alert. So I think that will be a very good conversation she has, because Anne has kind of resigned herself to thinking that she's not going to get married. Um, but but I think that she's I mean, she might still have more stuff to like work out with that. So I think that will be a conversation that can definitely be brought up. I'm just excited to hear about Miss Stacy's husband, like who was good enough to marry Miss Stacy, you know?
Okay. Before we start talking about the take notice board and the whole
Oh my
sherbet
lord.
thing, I want to quickly, because I know that will be like the thing we talk about for an hour, I want to quickly talk about Anne's birthday and how
Oh,
she immediately said like, "Oh, I want to find out about my parents." Because it broke my heart seeing Marilla's expression. It
yes.
broke my heart.
Um, and we did talk about that also. The speculation that Anne's search for her past is going to be kind of hard for Matthew and Marilla to accept. Obviously, it seems like it's more difficult to Marilla than Matthew, because I think he just wants Anne to be happy.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely think that we saw that. It's kind of an issue for Marilla. And the quote that they have after, where Matthew says, "What if she finds something that she doesn't want to know?" felt a little ominous to me. Like
Oh,
maybe something like
yes.
that's going to happen. So, yikes. But also, this is going to bring in a lot of really good discussion, I feel like, and an interesting side of Marilla, I think.
Yeah, like what if her parents were murdered or never wanted her or like neglect, I don't know, like something terrible. Like I'm so scared. On the
Yeah.
bright side, Gilbert will be escorting her on this
Oh
trip,
my
so
gosh. We also headcanon that.
yeah.
I can't believe I get to see that. Which my
We should
friend
be
actually,
writers.
Moira, hire us, please. I will work for
Yes.
free. Please hire me.
Dude, someone on Tumblr told me, like, can you please become part of the writers team? I was like,
Oh, that
sure.
is just so nice. Whoever said that, shout out to you. We love you.
Yeah. Oh
My
god.
friend actually talked about this in relation to, Sherbert obviously taking the train together and stuff. I think, well, obviously there's going to be more than one trip because the two shots of them on the train, like Anne next to Gilbert and them across the seats from each other, she's like two different hats on and the train's going the same way. Anyway, my friend, actually one of the ones that watched with us on Monday, sent me, I guess someone might have posted it on Twitter. And if that's the case, if it's you, I'm so sorry. I don't know where it originated from. But she sent me the screenshots of, that shot from the trailer where they're sitting across from each other and Gilbert looks kind of angsty and like mad a little bit and Anne kind of looks distant. Um, my friend sent
Yeah.
that to me and said, "Hey, yo, what if Gilbert's not mad at Anne? What if Anne kind of like reveals something about her past or lets it slip?" And that's Gilbert being like, "What the hell?" You know what I'm saying? Like Anne kind of like offhandedly saying something and Gilbert getting angry for her or concerned for her, which I
Oh
feel like is
yeah.
very likely, especially if it's not the first train trip. Like if Anne has started figuring things out or opening up more about the orphanage and what she went through.
Dude, I'm gonna say something really dark, but what if Anne's mom got raped?
Oh,
I'm not
that
sorry, guys. That's really dark of me to say, but now like a box has unlocked with all the possibilities, and it's scaring me. Jesus
that
Christ.
they should not have added that line in because my brain is running wild. Like I really feel like that
Yeah,
is absolutely not the last we're going to hear of that. And it's not just going to be this fine dandy little thing where Anne
yeah.
finds out that everything was perfect and obviously it wasn't because of the orphanage and everything, but I feel like there's going to be a catch and I am not ready for it. So that's fun. So, looping back around to what you had said leading into the Gilbert and Anne train rides, um, the take notice board is
Ugh.
going to be seemingly a big point this season. Which before I get into my mile long notes about this one 20-second Sherbert scene, um,
Jesus Christ.
I know. I think it was interesting to me. First of all, the board just I feel like opens up opportunity for so much to go wrong or to
Yeah.
happen. I feel like lots of angst and confusion, I'm sure. But one of the things that I saw from it was obviously in this episode, Ruby has not grown out of her crush for Gilbert, and
Unfortunately.
yeah, which at first I was a little disappointed, but then I do trust Moira, and I think that the only reason she wouldn't have grown out of it and is still kind of like hammering it in and then doing things like asking Anne to go talk to Gilbert and talking about this new take notice board, I feel like it's definitely still a thing for a reason and that they are going to have some kind of discussion about it. If that makes sense. So I just feel
Yeah.
like it's not just I feel like it's going to get quote like resolved this season one way or the other, or they're going to at least start having really real talks with Ruby about, hey, I don't think Gilbert likes you, or you can't call dibs on people. um Potentially maybe even about Anne and Gilbert, I don't know, but I hope that they do something with it and don't just let poor Ruby hang out there with her feelings. forever.
Yeah, definitely. I I think Gilbert will reject her. I think that'll be the only way for Ruby. I can't speak anymore. I think that'll be the only way for Ruby to let it go because
Hmm.
Gilbert has always like dismissed it or like didn't want to hurt her feelings. But I think
And
he has
like
to do it.
Gilbert knows, right? Like, am
He
I
knows.
because that hockey scene, he seemed more confused than anything. But there's no way he doesn't know. Although I don't know. Um, but I kind of would love a scene exactly what you said. I not like a flat out rejection from Gilbert where it's like mean or anything. Like that's very out of character, obviously. But like I think a scene maybe where Gilbert like sits her down and is like, "Hey, Ruby, like it's not, it's nothing to do with you. Like I promise. You're great, you're excellent, you're amazing. I'm just not the guy for you." Like I want a
Yeah.
mature, not just like a sorry Ruby, I don't like you and just kind of like leaving it at that. Like I feel like it's way more in character for Gilbert to kind of sit her down and be like, "I'm sorry." And it's like nothing personal, but I just see you as a friend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hope that'll be the case because Ruby won't give up. She won't.
Mm-mm.
She's going to Queens because of him. Like she won't give up. So Gilbert has to end the whole saga. And I wonder if Ruby will realize then that, oh wait, it's always been Anne who he is looking at and not me. And I wonder how she'll react to that when she realizes like, oh, it's her.
Well, yeah, and like they even kind of hinted that maybe they could do that because she says like he was looking at you with such oh my God, I can't even say it. He was looking at you with such romance in his eyes. And the fact that she even specifically mentioned we're of age now and Gilbert hasn't said anything really makes me feel like they're kind of not forcing a conversation, but one has to happen soon because they are of age, like what is taking Gilbert so long? And he like doesn't have an excuse anymore to be waiting around even though he just like straight up doesn't like me. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that was a very uh foreshadowy sort of line. So if they deal
Yeah.
with this in a good way, it will be an amazing plot point if they handle it right, which I do trust Moira. I do think it'll go well. So
Okay, before we talk about the conversation between Anne and Gilbert, I want to say two things that are just like sporadic notes that I want to get off my chest because I'll forget them. First of all, Charlie is such a cutie, trying and failing to get
oh
Anne's attention.
goodness.
And secondly, Tilly being that bitch is what I live for. She
Yes, it's what
has
she
like
deserves.
she has men crawling at her feet, and I love it. She's like bathing in the attention. I don't know.
Oh
I,
yes.
I want to be her, basically.
Queen. It's what she deserves.
Yeah.
And that is interesting that you bring up Charlie too, because we were wondering in the first episode where we talked about the trailer, or the episode we talked about the trailer. We were wondering, is the Charlie thing going to pop up because he feels like he has to because of the dance, or is it going to be more of a kind of implied that Charlie maybe was catching feelings before we initially like joined the timeline? And it kind of looks like I think it looks like at least that he has sort of had a crush on her. The same way that it's kind of implied that like Moody has had a crush on Diana. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, so I am excited for that one also because that other promo came out where they're like, "Anne, are you gonna dance with Charlie?" Um, and she's like very confused. So I we haven't even started talking, like they haven't even talked about the dance yet, which I just realized. So I
No.
am ready for it. Where is it?
So,
I can't even talk about
and,
it.
and I'm so excited. Okay. And talking to Gilbert, I've seen this scene 5 times now, I think, maybe even more. And I'm still discovering new things about it.
There's so much to break down.
You can take the lead. I think you're more intelligent about this than I can be right
Oh,
now.
no, not true. But oh my gosh, I actually to take lines from young adult fiction, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding when this scene was over. Um, because I mean literally like we said when we all sat down, we're like, hey, ground rules, you're not allowed to scream during a sherbet scene until it's over. So when she walked right up to him, I like gasped in a breath and didn't let it out until she was talking to Ruby. um, but yes, it just reconfirmed for me, Gilbert's crush has not gone away at all. It has very much still been there. He knows what he wants. And I saw that because of the look of disappointment more than anything.
Yes.
Um, and they want to make sure we know that like Gilbert's feelings are still very real for Anne, because when she walks away from the scene, Ruby explicitly says, "Did you see the romance in his eyes?" Obviously thinking while they're talking about her, but they want to make sure we know that. um, it was also very interesting to me that Gilbert was kind of going along with it when he was thinking that Anne was talking about herself. And he's like, "So you want me to post?" And he gets like very excited. But the second he realizes it's about Ruby, he's like, "Oh, I'm not really like a take notice kind of guy." Um, someday when a girl comes along, like that was just, again, we've talked about this, or I have on my blog. I'm sure I know you have too. Actually, I've reblogged the post, but how mature Gilbert is in his feelings. Like it's not just like I personally think Gilberts aren't just like a little giddy schoolboy crush. I think that he genuinely can see a future with Anne. Like I think it's it's a very real, like not just like, ooh, it like might be fun to kiss this girl. Like I think it's very, he's so mature that I think he doesn't have any problem being like, oh, I could see myself with this girl, like for sure. And I think
Yeah.
that, well, it's like reiterated, like when he says like to their future together, it's not just like posting, because some of the comments on the board were just like, Charlie's a nice boy, or like Josie and Billy walked home together, but they're kind of just like offhanded things, I guess. Or like Tilly has a good smile, like they're all like offhanded little comments, but Gilbert's like to their future together, like that's a big statement.
The thing what annoys me is that we still haven't seen Anne and Gilbert being genuine friends, which I thought we would have in the beginning of season 3, but we don't.
Yeah,
Just on one hand, I get it because I want to show the progression on screen and on hiatus, but realistically, it would have happened in the 1.5 year span
I agree.
that, we skipped. So I like it that we are going to see it, but on the other hand, I had wished it had already been established. But back to
Yeah,
that conversation, you immediately noticed what was happening, but I didn't at all because I was just so focused on the fact that I was watching episode 1 that I didn't realize what was being said.
I
Um,
feel
Lucas is so good in saying nothing and everything all at once
that. Yes.
through his facials and his body. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm a drama major, so I'm analyzing every fucking thing I see. He's so good at subtext.
Oh, yes. And he has been
And
since season
yeah,
1. Like,
it's
he's
so,
so good at that.
I don't
Say
know,
what you want about Lucas,
it's
but he's an excellent actor. Like people can have, you can have your own opinion on him as a person, but like he is an unbelievably good actor. He is so talented.
just the way he uses his eyes and his voice. It's
Oh,
so he means it all. It's so cool to see.
also like talking about like the subtext, like the subtleties in his performance. Um, like that even really transfers over into the scene immediately after that where Anne just walks up to him to try to see the romance in his eyes.
That
And
was so funny.
I know. But like in the trailer even we saw it, like he turns around and for a second there's this micro expression where he's like, holy shit, Anne is like inches from my face. And then that immediately goes to him like staring down at her mouth, which I'm not gonna unpack that. And then he kind of like looks back up at her and she's just staring at him and like playing the transition between being like, oh my god, it's Anne Shirley to what the hell are you doing? It's like so good. And the little line in there where she's looking at him, she's like, eyes, and then like stutters. I love that.
I was so surprised that that was a scene from episode one because I truly believed it was one of the last episodes that we'd see it because it
I
seemed
agree.
so grand and important, but it's just a silly scene and
we're,
I
we're
can't get over it.
clowns.
Oh God.
But also it's like such, I love how they play that like 16-year-old girl thing, where she like grows up to him and like gets literally lost in Gilbert Blythe's eyes, which I mean, who doesn't? But um it's so good. And there were so many layers to not only their performance, but the way that they wrote it, the way that they staged it. Because I can't believe I didn't mention this. When Gilbert says to their future together, you can see it where Anne kind of forgets that she's there for Ruby, and she says the
Oh
yes is very
yes.
like distracted and uh
Ernest.
yeah, and not at all. It's a completely different tone than when she sort of snaps out of it and says, "You better snatch Ruby up." You know what I'm saying? Which Anne like I guess in canon knows now that Gilbert doesn't like Ruby. I'm sure she like presumed before. So they have to talk about it, I feel like, at this point, because she tried to bring it up to her obviously immediately after, and that didn't really work. So I feel like they've got to talk about it.
I'm wondering if Gilbert was saying the truth that he is not a take notice kind of guy. But if he isn't, would he be a very intimate face to face kind of guy? Or would he
Yes.
be a grand gesture kind of guy? Because honestly, I can see both because he's so open about it too that I don't know.
I think I see Gilbert, more as a point blank, earnest, I will just tell you to your face kind of, and he hasn't told Anne yet, but whatever. Kind of person, as opposed
Yeah.
to like a grand gesture, I guess, in the sense of like, I don't think he'd plan like an elaborate like confession sort of like moment. I think he would have, I feel like in the future he would have no problem just walking right up to Anna and being like, "Hey, I feel exactly this way about you. How do you feel about me?" I feel
Oh
like that's
my God. Can you
perfect for him.
imagine? I'm not ready. I'm not.
No, I can't imagine it. Don't make me. Which my friend actually brought this up to me today, and I know that I've gotten asked about it. I know that you've gotten asked about it. But she was like, "Dude, what if Sherbert kisses this season?" And I would love to hear your thoughts about it, but honestly, I still feel like not yet.
I just short circuited for a moment at the thought of them kissing.
don't
Um,
don't do it to me.
um, my fanfic mind went haywire. But I don't think they'll be kissing this season. I